Mabel has to learn to go to sleep on her own without us there rocking her and holding her and stuff.
But already? Does she have to do it already?
Well, we can wait till she's a teenager, but it's going to be much tougher on our backs.
Welcome to Bottle Episodes, a podcast where we discuss very special episodes of TV shows that focus their action on a single primary location. I'm CJ.
And I'm Courtney.
And today we are talking about Mad About You, the NBC sitcom that aired from 1992 to 1999, and specifically the episode The Conversation, which aired on December 16th, 1997. How you doing, Courtney? How's your apocalypse treating you?
My apocalypse is going rather smoothly. So far, I've been taking a lot of naps. I have been eating a lot of chocolate pudding and binge watching a lot of things. What about you? What are you doing with your apocalypse?
I've been not watching so much. I've been reading.
Oh, good.
I'm one of those people that buys books more than reads them.
Okay.
Every time I go to a museum, I always make sure to stop by the gift shop and buy the coffee table book that relates to the exhibit. So I have all of these fashion books, art books, picture books, and I've always had the intention of reading them someday. Someday is now.
Someday is now. The time is now, CJ.
I'm in this huge fashion history styling mode right now. So that's really cool. It's interesting to read about the world that no longer is.
Oh, God. Oh, wow.
Yes,
we're there.
We are
We've gotten
forging
there.
forth into a new era of American history. And so it's nice to almost do a retrospective before we leave behind whatever we left behind.
Oh,
I don't
my
mean
God,
that to sound so
wow.
dire. I just mean that for better or worse, the world is changing. And as we head into the future, let's look to the past.
Exactly.
Okay, so this is The Conversation. The episode is called The Conversation. And as always, we'll kick things off with a plot synopsis. Paul and Jamie Buchman want their 6-month-old Mabel to go to sleep, but the baby can't stop crying. Following a parenting method meant to teach the child self-sufficiency, the two new parents stand outside the nursery, forbidding themselves from rocking the child to sleep. As Mabel cries, Paul and Jamie debate parenting styles and catch up on the minutiae of each other's everyday lives. As the night wears on, it becomes harder for Paul and Jamie to stand by and listen to their daughter cry. But Mabel falls asleep at last. Though relieved, Paul and Jamie are awash with melancholy upon this moment that they perceive as their daughter's first loss of innocence. Courtney, were you a big Mad About You fan back in the day?
You know what? I was.
Were you?
And to be perfectly honest, it was one of those shows where I probably was a little too young to be watching it. And it weirdly ended up shaping my perceptions of adulthood, whether I wanted it to or not, whether it should or should not have. I really thought that, you get to be an adult and you get this fancy apartment, you get the dog, you get to be like a beautiful yuppie couple in New York City. And I just made a lot of assumptions about what adulthood was based on this show. And I didn't realize I had been carrying that until I started watching this episode, and it just shot me back in time to that space when I was a kid. What about you, CJ? Were you a big fan?
I never watched it when it was on because, like you, I was too young not even to understand the risque or double entendre type jokes. I just didn't relate to it or care about these adult concerns. I didn't care about marriage or child rearing, at the time that the show was on. It wasn't necessarily a family show. It was centered around this yuppie well-to-do couple. So it just went right over my head. It was like a nothing burger to me. And then me and my good friend Maggie in college around 2006, we discovered old reruns on Chicago's local MeTV, which is dedicated to running old reruns of everything from the 50s to the 90s. And we just fell madly in love with this show. And I've been a diehard fan ever since. I love the witty, urbane, and heartfelt, really insightful humor and writing. And I always felt bad whenever the show got a bad rap for being pedestrian, white bread, and bland 90s sitcom.
Interesting.
It has a reputation for being square.
Really?
Yeah.
I never really realized that. I did recognize that it had been perhaps overlooked. I feel like a lot of people kind of forgot about it until they decided to do that recent reboot, which I didn't actually get a chance to see. But, I feel like a lot of people had that thought, oh, there was also that show Mad About You. And I know a lot of people kind of, when they do remember it, they think back to the crossover with Friends, where there's the two
Right.
the two twins,
Yes.
Ursula and Phoebe.
Mad About You gave birth to Phoebe's twin sister, Ursula. They had to justify using the same actress, and because of that, these shows do take place in the same universe.
I love it's a shared universe.
Yeah, kind of in the same vein that Friends is chastised for being slight and homogenous, Mad About You gets that same rap as well. Obviously, some of those charges are just.
Fair, yes.
But also, I think these critics are not looking hard enough at the writing. I do think that this show really succeeded at championing the smaller, more intimate moments of a marriage.
Okay, yeah. I will say, even as a kid, I remember being like, this feels like I'm peeking in on something, less so than just sort of watching a sitcom and having a fun time. Like it felt like I was really experiencing something with these characters, and maybe that's a beautiful nuance of some of the writing. The chemistry between the two leads is pretty great. Yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm sad that people dismiss it in that way.
So what you and I both seem to love is that the show seems to focus on these small little passionless moments of everyday life, and this episode is a perfect microcosm of that. I will say, we've been doing this podcast about bottle episodes. You cannot find more of a bottle episode than this bottle episode. I think that we buried the lead. We failed to mention at the top that this episode is performed on a single set in real time, not even any commercial breaks. The show struck a deal with NBC, and they ran one long commercial up top when this episode originally aired. And so this episode
I did not know
totally
that.
uninterrupted.
I didn't realize that. That's incredible.
Yeah, so I'm hard-pressed to think of any other bottle episode that comes close. There are one or two other episodes in television history that I could think of off the top of my head. The Haunting of Hill House, their bottle episode is comprised of 2 extended single takes, but none that are presented totally unbroken. What do you think?
It's really impressive. I can't imagine being someone in that audience while they were taping this and trying to work their way through it. And just, sitting there and getting to watch this 2-person play.
Right. So the method that Paul and Jamie are trying out, it's called Ferberization. It's named after Dr. Richard Ferber, who wrote about it in his 1985 book called Solve Your Child's Sleep Problems. I checked in with the parent of a newborn, my sister.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Okay.
I asked her, what is this method? Does it work? Is it popular? She says, yes. It's called the Cry It Out method. And she says it works. Her child is similarly aged. Maybelle is about 6 or 7 months old. And she said it works. She's a huge fan of it.
That's amazing. Well, I mean, and then you can see, how difficult this process is. You can see, by virtue of this one take, by virtue of seeing these 2 people really go through this, oh my God, you can see how hard it is to just let your baby stay in the room and cry all night, essentially.
I recently heard of this new terminology. I think it's another instance of new terminology being affixed to longstanding principles. But now I've heard of jet fighter parenting. So we know that helicopter parenting is where parents constantly hover, constantly intervene, and make it easy on the child in terms of solving all the child's problems. Whereas jet fighter parenting, you sit on the sidelines, watch keenly, and then right when they absolutely need intervention, pew, you swoop in like a jet fighter. And I feel like that is the dichotomy being set up in this episode.
Oh, yeah.
There's a conflict here, if that hasn't come through. Paul so badly wants to override the method and enter the bedroom and soothe his child to sleep.
Yes.
Where Jamie is the one who wants to say, no, let's power through this. Let's teach her self-sufficiency. I do think that that is a very common conflict in terms of parenting styles. You know, helicoptering, which is Paul's inclination, and the jet fighter, which is Jamie's inclination.
Exactly. And to be honest, it feels like a distillation of their personality types as well, right? Like, for some reason, Jamie always read as kind of cool to me. I think that was kind of her purpose. You know, she was, Connecticut bred,
right,
from Yale, like
very
blonde
icy.
And like very kind of austere and in ways remote, right? Whereas Paul has always just been like, I'm all feelings 100% of the time. You don't want to hear? I'm a guy. I just roll with it. But really, I don't. I'm like a ball of anxiety. Like, it's just... So yeah, so they're just... This distills it down. Like, she is trying her best to keep them in this space of, no, this is the right thing to do. Let's be cool-headed and reasonable about this. While also she knows by the time she gets to the bottom of the episode, she is feeling very much like she has done something wrong by employing this method. And meanwhile, Paul is just trying to get in there at any cost because that's just what he wants to do. And it's his baby and he's going to go in there and he's going to soothe her and there's nothing you can do about it. I love it.
I love how the episode coalesces to a point where he says, you know, forget the method, forget the books, forget intellectually what you feel you should do. What does your gut say you should do, right? Mm-hmm. And that seems very plain spoken and maybe a little on the nose, but the way it was executed in this episode, it felt very tenderly written. And, you know, she breaks at the very last moment and she says, what I want to do is go in there and rock my child to sleep. And, you know, I was moved.
I was moved too. I thought it was really lovely. He's like, hey, it's our baby. We're going in there. You know, just listen to your heart. Let's go in there. And no judgment on my end. Again, I am also a person without children. So please do what you want. Do however you feel is best by your child. But it was just really interesting to see them go through that together.
I want to back up just a little bit and talk about how Jamie shrewdly relates their parenting styles to how they themselves were raised.
Yes.
Another point that seems fairly straightforward and not the most profound necessarily, but very fun in terms of the way they unpacked that in the moment. Of course, how you're raised affects how you're going to raise your own child. And that's something that my partner and I talk about all the time.
Aww.
I was definitely helicoptered. My parents both helicoptered and doted.
Aww.
And I also share a lot of personality traits with Paul.
Do you really?
Yeah. I get these feelings. So, you know, those dots are always worth connecting.
Oh, yeah. And it does a good deep dive on the characters, too. This ends up being a really, really delicious character study, ultimately. Mm-hmm. We find out a lot about them, even though we feel like we've known these folks for quite some time. How many seasons are we in at this point?
This is 6 out of 7.
6 out of 7, so we're kind of nearing the end. We know them very well at this point. But at the same time, there's still something fresh in the way that they're interacting with each other that is just so intriguing to watch. To watch them really sort through and talk through what it is that they're doing, the process of how they're doing, how they're both reacting to it. And then, like you mentioned at the top, there's also some minutia that's happening. There's still some mystery in the relationship. You know, Paul finds out that Jamie has won an absurd amount of pasta. And then that becomes a running gag where he's like, well, our child is going to be eating pasta until she's 35. You know, like, like it's just really cute.
It totally captured in this fun and fresh way this notion of a married couple who go about their day-to-day, but they never really catch up with each other, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting to relate it back to the situation that the entire world is in right now. I wonder how many couples, how many families are catching up with each other. You know, we've just been caught up in these lifestyles that are propelling us to the next moment. And now we are being forced to sit still and take stock, which is what I love about bottle episodes.
Yeah.
They're always a taking stock.
Right.
You know, where are we in our relationship? It's fascinating to see these characters ask each other, hey, what's going on with you? What's going on with ourselves?
Well, I just saw this this meme today where people were talking about how they're discovering what kind of person their spouse is at work. They're like the, oh God, I'm married to the let's circle back guy, or oh no.
Yeah, I seen that meme.
So good, so good. And this feels like that.
It's interesting because spouses, significant others, friends, we rarely see each other at work, right?
True.
I've never
very
seen
true.
you at work, and we've known each other for 10 years.
Yeah.
You've never seen me at work.
Yeah, you've never really seen me at work either. It's really funny because what's happening now is we're doing more like catching up over the phone or video messaging each other and that sort of a thing. And so occasionally you're still in work mode a little bit and it bleeds over
Right.
into a conversation I'm having.
We're kind of finally starting to see all sides of ourselves.
Yeah.
Yes, we're separate physically, but in some ways, are we getting to know each other more?
I agree. I think we are. I think we're being forced to do that. And I think we are in our little bubbles, our respective bubbles, but at the same time, we're just seeing each other a lot more clearly. And I think too, there's a lot of immediacy that's happening as well with what's happening. Like and I hate to be this person, but it feels like there's a little bit of death kind of permeating the air, and it makes everybody just kind of realize how important certain things are. So as a result, we're just kind of breaking ourselves down to our most authentic selves. You know, to relate it back to the episode, I think of, how primal it is, the relationship between a parent and a child. So it boils you down to your most authentic self in some ways, being a parent does. And you see that in that conversation that you mentioned, but in the conversation that Paul has with Jamie, and he's saying, what is your gut telling you? What are you feeling? And you see her kind of melt down into the person that she really is inside, where she's saying, screw the method. I'm going to go in there. I want to hug my kid.
I think that the more we analyze these bottle episodes, the more inevitably patterns start to surface.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that each of these bottle episodes that we've dissected, they all have this theme of stripping down, reducing.
Yes.
Reducing the series itself to its component parts.
Yes.
Reducing the characters down to their component parts.
Mm-hmm.
And in universe, the characters are stripping themselves down and asking themselves, what really matters to me? What are my values?
Exactly.
And I don't mean to keep relating this back to real life, but that is what's going on right now. We're all asking ourselves, what do we value?
I want to talk a little bit about that. I mentioned a flex earlier, and I feel like the flex that they definitely did was with Maury, my most beloved television dog. There's a moment where they realize that Maury is in the room with Mabel, and he is in danger of upsetting this whole process, and they have to get him out of that room. So you can just feel the audience's held breath as they see Paul kind of crawl into that space and then convince Maury to leave the room. And I don't know who that trainer is, but my hat is off to them. They did a great job. Maury was...
I hope they got paid double that week.
Because, they kept it moving. Maury came out of that room, and it was a very cute little moment, and you could see the audience, or hear the audience kind of cheering.
Yeah, I loved it.
Because it was so good. So good.
I went back and watched this episode, waiting for that moment. I hadn't seen this episode in 10 years, and I was like, oh, here's the moment with the dog. And as far as professional animal training and tricks go, I think it's very simple.
Okay.
Oh, no. I'm totally being a dick right now. But it's very stripped down and simple. But the net effect is, oh my God, this is a live moment happening. The dog can get up and run away at any moment and ruin this take. We're already more than halfway into the episode. But the trainer knows that's not going to happen. The director knows that's not going to happen.
The dog knows that's not going to happen.
Yes, exactly. But it looks and feels impressive.
It does. It feels very momentous because, they've been kind of at each other for a little bit at this point. And, they're like, okay, we need to cut the tension. How do we cut the tension? Oh, I know. Let's get Maury in here. Maury's cute. Maury is mischievous. What do people love? Babies and dogs, even though both are difficult to put on camera, but this particular dog is a 100% pro, so he's going to be on it.
Any other comments from a technical perspective?
I will say that I did love how they let it be imperfect. There are moments where the actors, you can hear them kind of stumble over their words a little bit. You can hear them go back a little bit before they say a sentence and come back in. Like, it's not perfect. And it feels more authentic as a result of that. Even when someone is doing a play, they have rehearsed that play within an inch of its life. There is still sort of this excitement that something could go wrong because it is a play, it is live, it is happening in front of you, and each iteration of that play is different as a result of the audience. You don't know what's going to happen with the audience. You don't know what's going to happen with the actor that night. They might have a fever or something. You don't know what's going to happen. But usually plays go pretty smoothly. You don't really have people kind of stumbling over their words or having issues. This felt authentic. I think the speed with which they have to put on an episode every single week lends itself to that. And then in addition, they're playing this very emotional thing, right? So the stumbling over sentences, the kind of almost circular logic that's happening, this argument that's happening, this conversation that's happening, you can feel it ramp up and slow down, ramp up and slow down, ramp up and slow down, and it feels like a very natural rhythm. And I loved it. I thought that was really great. What about you? Anything technical that you want to say about it?
I think the only thing that I would want to get nerdy about is the placement of the camera, and maybe that relates to what you were saying about the overall rhythm and pacing of the episode. I think the director, who, by the way, is Gordon Hunt, who is Helen Hunt's dad.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a family affair. He did a great job at sort of breaking up that script. The episode doesn't feel static, which I thought was very impressive.
It doesn't, yeah.
And so I think that they chunked it out into these 3 to 5 minute intervals, which is what Paul and Jamie keep calling their little pockets of time, intervals. But the episode is broken up into intervals, and the blocking changes up, and we get little segments of the episode where the camera is allowed to shift positions, the characters are allowed to shift positions, and in doing so, we get these soft resets that keep the momentum going in a way that I thought was really impressive.
And then I love that opening where the camera just automatically starts to push in on them. It suddenly just makes everything feel a lot tighter, a lot more, I won't say claustrophobic, but it just feels a lot more intimate because you are right up on them. You're closing in on these two people who are in this particular circumstance, and then it just feels like the camera just stays on them. They can't escape the conversation, they can't escape the situation that's happening with their daughter crying, and they can't escape us, the people who are watching or peeping in on this situation.
Yeah, I think that each of these bottle episodes that makes an impact to varying degrees, they have that setup shot or a series of shots where the setting looks just a little different, where the camera right off the bat is cueing us to think that things are going to be a little different this time. It's an effective choice.
It does feel like you're being sealed into the vault a little bit.
Right.
The button on the end, not to just jump to the end of the episode, but the button.
It's so deliciously meta. And I love Mad About You's tags for that reason. Sometimes the tags would be coyly meta or just step outside of the Mad About You universe altogether.
So in the tag, they're sitting there and they're watching some show, and they're pointing out that, hey, it's really impressive that they did this all in one take. And of course, Jamie is very unimpressed by it. So while Paul is very much like, no, this is very hard to do. And of course, he's the filmmaker, so he would know. But he's like, this is a hard thing to do. And she's just kind of like, it's just two people talking, basically.
I love that those are kind of the two reactions to the long take as an art form. Either it's, oh my God, this is such a big deal, this is amazing. Or it's, I don't care, just tell me a good story. So how full does the conversation make your bottle?
You know what? I want to go very high with this one. I know we've been very high on a lot of, not literally, but maybe a little emotionally. But I want to say that this is, I think, the most inspired and also one of the most audacious episodes I've seen of the ones that we have done. It is literally one take. They do not leave that space. They don't escape it. And the conversation is so beautifully handled. I want to give this one, I'm going to put this up there, 99.99. Like it's way up there. Just by virtue of the fact that they're in that bottle, they don't leave that bottle, and it progresses the story forward. It progresses, it's an excellent character story, and it progresses the way that we see them parenting this child. It's excellently executed.
Hashtag heart same. I'll go with 99.99%. In terms of bottle episodes, it's one of the best. It's technically ambitious. It's elegantly written. It's a character study. In terms of the series, it is a significant moment in the characters' lives by being not significant at all, which is my favorite kind of writing. Like, the characters might not necessarily think of it as a milestone in their lives, but we do. We understand how important it was and how transformative it was in their lives. So it really checks all those boxes. It really does feel like, as you were saying, theater. And you really feel like you went on this journey, this quiet, intimate journey with these characters. So what's not to love? 99.99%.
Mad about you. You deserve it. Don't let the haters get you down. Mad about you.
We are mad about you.
Tell me why I love you like you do, like I do.
So this has been Bottle Episodes. If you have an idea for a bottle episode from television history we should cover, or if you're trapped in a single primary location and need to send a distress call, email podcastbottleepisodes@gmail.com. That's podcastbottleepisodes@gmail.com. Stay safe and healthy, everyone.
Stay safe. Take care.